Buy Goalkeeper Void is back for Game Week 25. Welcome to FPL Mate, my name is Dan. It feels like it's been a little while since we've seen any FPL, but it is back this weekend, which means we need to think about our transfer moves ahead of this double game week. As always guys, this video will be split into two parts, the first of which we will have a look at those players you might be thinking about removing from your team and which ones you should instead keep. After that, we'll have a look at those replacements, who you should buy and which players you should maybe avoid. Players will be tier listed with the best players at the top and the worst at the bottom. And we are getting straight stuck back in with the keeps for the forward position, and we have got certainly a few players that I would very much be keen on keeping this week. And the first play is actually going to be Wissa, who I think has been disappointing people recently, but I've been watching a lot of Wissa recently over the last week or so. I've been catching up on his highlights because he is a player I'm thinking about buying this week as a new forward, and he is getting an insane amount of chances to score. In fact, 23 shots. No one is beating this at the moment, and 9 big chances. Only Erling Haaland has had more big chances to score in the last 6 game weeks. So I think he has been pretty unlucky to not score, and 2 goals from 4.48 XG I think as absolute numbers about how good he has been in terms of the opportunities he's getting to score and how this Brentford side is set up to benefit him. The next fixtures are pretty good for him as well. Game week 25 West Ham, Leicester in game week 26, followed by Everton in 27 and Aston Villa in 28, and in game week 29 he is one of the players who is guaranteed a fixture. There are many teams that will actually blank in game week 29, and Brentford is not one of them. They face Bournemouth in that game week. After that, we have got Alexander Isak. I know some people are thinking about selling him this week after a blank in game week 24, but Man City once again proving against Arsenal that they can certainly concede some goals, and Alexander Isak will be licking his lips ready to go for this fixture. He's still putting up some of the best numbers among forwards. Yes, Wissa has overtaken him for XG over recent game weeks, but if you also include the expected assists and the creativity, Isak is on top for forwards and those underlying numbers and how many goal contributions we expect him to get. So I understand with Isak having no game week, blank game week in game week 29, people are thinking about removing him soon, but against Man City, I don't think this is the right moment to do that. Gakpo is also going to be a keep for me this week. Double game week against Wolves and Aston Villa, and even if you are thinking about moving to Arne Slot as your assistant manager, I think the lack of good forward options or standout forward options probably means that Gakpo is a player I would prefer to keep, and maybe you could make a move for one of your defenders, potentially sell a Alexander Arnold if he's injured, Van Dijk, Konate, maybe Alisson if you have these guys, and those are the players that I would maybe rather remove from my FPL team to allow for Slot as an assistant manager. So those are the kind of reasons you might want to keep Gakpo. Of course, if you're not using your assistant manager chip, then Gakpo is obviously going to be a keep. Let's move on to monitors, and Watkins has to be a monitor for this moment. If he was confirmed available for this double game week, then I think that would be genuinely brilliant. Ipswich at home and Liverpool, tough fixture, but it is a home game as well, and we know Aston Villa have some decent fixtures coming up. Chelsea, Crystal Palace and Brentford are all games that he can potentially get attacking returns in, but he needs to be fit first, and that's why he's going to be in the monitor section. We can't say for sure quite yet. João Pedro, I'm not massively against keeping him. I think he's maybe a player to monitor. Again, it might be a case of there not being too many obvious replacements at his price point at this current moment. But against Chelsea, this is a good fixture at the moment at home. Southampton in 26 as well. I think João Pedro is fine to keep. If you don't have any other major issues in your team, then maybe you could sell him. But generally, I think he is a keep. Raul Jimenez, tough game against Forest. Could you potentially bench him and then reintroduce him into your starting 11 in 26-27? To be honest, you could play him in 25 at home against Forest. We know Forest aren't completely undefeatable. Yes, they got the big win against Brighton, but the week before they got battered by Bournemouth, and Fulham are a good side, and you think Raul Jimenez, penalty taker, maybe starting to find a bit of form again, having scored last game week, could be a player to actually keep at this point. Haaland is purely a budget thing. He's actually been genuinely performing fine, pretty good, back to his old self, but is he worth the money? If you still have him in your team and you don't need the money to make other moves, then obviously you're probably going to keep him, but again, he is a cash cow player, and you can probably find better value for money elsewhere, which is why he is a low monitor. Fixtures aren't great for him generally either. I think I would probably sell Cunha ahead of Liverpool away, with Wolves not doing too great at the moment, taking plenty of shots, but not really in dangerous areas, with only one big chance in the past 6 game weeks. It's not quite good enough, is it? But it's a difficult run of fixtures here for Wolves. They don't really get better until game week 29, so maybe a player to sell for now. And Nicholas Jackson, I'm running out of excuses for him at this moment. He has got to be a sell at this point. Away fixture against Brighton, who, despite the big loss against Nottingham Forest, they haven't actually been too bad defensively outside of that fixture in recent game weeks. And Jackson, with the potential injury, I don't know if he's guaranteed minutes at this particular moment. So yeah, he has dropped off in his underlying numbers as well. There are better options out there for your forwards. And Duran, if you have him in your team, he is no longer in the Premier League. He is in Saudi Arabia, so certainly going to be a sell. For those midfielders, Brian Mbeumo definitely would be looking to keep him ahead of these next 2 fixtures. We spoke about Wissa and all the opportunities he's getting, but I have to be honest, Mbeumo is not too far behind. 20 shots, 5 big chances, and 3.16 XG in the past 6 game weeks is really, really strong. And how about this creativity? 14 key passes as well. He really is one of the top FPL assets in midfield at this present moment, so certainly a keep. Rodgers is also going to be a keep for this double game week. I don't think we need to argue too much about this one. It's disappointing because he hasn't really been performing in the Premier League in recent game weeks, but in other competitions, absolutely amazing. Scoring goals, getting assists. We've seen that in the FA Cup against Spurs, in the Champions League as well. I think he is in good form, but if you only watch Premier League games, you maybe not seeing it, you're maybe not noticing it. So yeah, certainly a player I would love to have for this game week. No way I'd be selling him. And Cole Palmer, another player I would look to keep for this run of fixtures. I mean, we've got Southampton and Leicester at home coming up in 27 and 28. You're definitely going to want to have a Cole Palmer in your team for those game weeks. In 27 in particular, this is a game week where Cole Palmer is probably the best captain option for that week, since Liverpool face Newcastle in that game week. So I think Palmer is certainly going to be a keep. Disappointing against some of the tougher oppositions, but in the easier fixtures, generally he does better. We saw the start of that with an assist against West Ham last week. Monitor these Manchester United midfielders, Ahmad and Fernandes. I don't think they are must keeps necessarily, but they are certainly players I would be more keen to keep than not. They've got Spurs in 25, great fixture. 27, we have Ipswich at home, and a decent fixture in game week 29 for Manchester United as well. So they are a team that I would be trying to hold on to their assets if it's possible, but obviously it might not always be possible. Gordon, I'd be more keen to sell him than maybe some of the other options. He's no Alexander Isak, still a very good option. Could get something against Manchester City, but that blank game week in 29 looming over us for Newcastle, he might be a player that is easier to sacrifice than others. And Luis Diaz, I think he is going to have some rotation risk now that we have Jota, Darwin and Chiesa available now. It is a tough spot for these Liverpool wingers unless your name is Mo Salah, and I think Cody Gakpo is pretty nailed on at the moment too. So Luis Diaz, I think, is in real danger of losing some minutes, so even in the double game week I would consider removing him. Iwobi is going to be a sell with Nottingham Forest, Crystal Palace, Brighton, and not the perfect fixtures for him. We spoke about maybe benching Raul Jimenez for some of these game weeks, and I think Raul Jimenez is a much better FPL asset than Iwobi. So I think Iwobi at this point, if you still have him, probably going to be a player to sell. And with the injuries, potential injuries to Maddison and Eze, we don't know if they're going to be available for game week 25 or not at time of recording. So I think they're probably players you just remove. There's plenty of great midfielders that we're going to talk about as transfers in. So if you do have Iwobi, Maddison, Eze, I think you can make a really nice and straightforward transfer this week. If you've got more players in the monitor category, it might be a little bit tougher. Let's do defenders next, and Robinson is going to be my #1 keep for this week. And what you will see in this graphic, in this table, is there's a lot of defenders with pretty bad runs of fixtures that a lot of people own, and Robinson is not one of those players. Nottingham Forest at home is not the greatest fixture, don't get me wrong, but it is at home, and after that, from a defensive point of view, I actually quite like these fixtures for Fulham. I think Forest is a better for a defender than it is an attacker. Same with Crystal Palace, same with Wolves and Brighton as well, most likely. I think all of these are good opportunities for a defender. So, whereas I don't like Raul and Iwobi so much, Robinson, yeah, if I had him in my team, I would definitely be keeping him this week. No need to make a transfer there. Aina also a keep. I think I would keep him for one more week for game week 25, unless you can just afford to bench him, because we do see Forest, they do have better fixtures from game week 29 onwards, and therefore you might actually want a Forest defender there. So, keep for now, I think, and then reassess, can we bench him for some of these tougher game weeks? If so, fine, and we'll bring him back into the starting 11s in game week 29. Alexander-Arnold, for now, is going to be a keep. I'm recording this video, obviously, before double game week 24 has finished, and I don't know if Alexander-Arnold is going to start against Everton. I'm not too convinced, to be honest. I'd probably say he won't. However, we do know from the manager's comments that his injury is not significant, and we do expect him to be available for game week 25. So for that reason, I think he is worth keeping. At least wait until press conferences at the end of the week before rushing to a Trent decision. But if he is injured, if he is unavailable, then I understand removing him, because after 25, City away, Newcastle at home, and a blank game week in 29 is going to be difficult, isn't it? Pedro Porro probably worth keeping for the next 2 game weeks for Spurs. Manchester United and Ipswich as a pair of fixtures, I think is okay. And we know Pedro Porro, despite playing for an awful defence, does have a little bit of attacking threat there. Mazraoui is a player that I would maybe bench this week and then maybe play in 26, 27 and 29. So if you do still have the 4.3 million man, you could keep him. You could potentially keep him there. Virgil van Dijk is an interesting one. If you are needing to free up a slot for your assistant manager slot, then Virgil could be a player to be sacrificed. However, if not, I think he is fine to keep as well. And Gvardiol, certainly edging towards a sell this week. I know he is getting the odd attacking return. His attacking numbers are actually genuinely really, really good, which is why he's not a 100% sell. But at the same time, Newcastle, Liverpool, Spurs, Forest, this is not the greatest run of fixtures for the City boys. And into the sell category, we've got some Newcastle defenders who not only have some tough game weeks from a defensive point of view. I mean, Man City away and Liverpool away, those are not fixtures you want for a defender. But also that blank game week in 29 means I think these players are pretty easy to sacrifice at this moment. You could potentially just bench them for now, but they are certainly players that if you are looking for a new defender in your team this week, these guys are fine to sacrifice in my opinion. And Martinez, with the potential injury and the tough fixture next against Spurs, I think I would be more willing to sell than someone like Mazraoui. And at this halfway point in the video, if you haven't dropped a like, please do consider doing so if you are finding this video useful. Massively, massively appreciated. I'm very excited to be back, as you can probably tell. Buy, Sell, Keep, Avoid is back, which means FPL is back. So do make sure you are subscribed as well. Let's move on to those players to buy. So some familiar faces in the forward section here, because we've got Wissa and Isak again towards the top of this list. Wissa, genuinely, I'm looking through the forwards right now with the best numbers, the players with good fixtures, the players who don't blank in game week 29, and I'm thinking Wissa has to be a consideration if you don't have him. I think the great thing about if you haven't bought Wissa yet, is that you've avoided the weeks in which he's been unlucky, and hopefully you can buy him ready in time for when things start to go his way a little bit more. Because a player, you know, if you're getting this insane amount of chances to score, you've got these great fixtures, you are going to find the back of the net. I did think he was unlucky last week against Spurs. We had a nice break for Brentford with them out of the cup competitions, and I think Wissa could be back with a bang. So he's a player I'm genuinely pretty excited about. One more note on Wissa is when Brentford play against some of the easier teams, they do play with a 3-man strike force, and that usually involves, you know, Mbermo on the right wing. We might see Kevin Schade on the left wing, and Wissa taking up those central positions. And if that is going to be the case, he's going to get even more opportunities to score as the out-and-out striker in this Brentford system. So he is a player I'm excited about right now, even though he's blanked recently. I think the data is suggesting that things are going to come good for him. He's no Jackson, he's no Darwin, he's not a player who typically misses a bunch of chances, so I don't expect that he will moving forward. Alexander Isak is an interesting case. I think this is probably the last week I would buy him if I didn't have him already because of that blank game week in 29. But of course, if you are planning a free hit in game week 29, then it's going to be a lot easier to buy Isak. What I would say before you do lock in your Game Week 29 free hit, and this is very relevant, particularly to the buy section of this video, is check out the video I made on chip strategy a couple of days ago. It's a really, really useful video. I think it's a video I'm very proud of, actually. And it really does help you to make the decisions of when you should free hit. And the big candidates are Game Week 29 and Game Week 34. If you are free hitting in game week 29, you don't have to worry about Isak blanking or, Morgan Rogers blanking or your Liverpool players blanking or who's the other team? Crystal Palace, who also blank in game week 29. You don't have to worry about those guys. So, definitely something you need to you don't necessarily have to commit to right now, but to have a good idea of which direction you're going to go would be a nice idea. Are you going to free hit in 29? Because that could impact your transfer plans right now. So anyway, go check out that video after this one. But for now, Isak, he's going to be a buy for the final game week. After this, he's probably going to be moving down the list because of that looming Game Week 29 blank. But I think Isak is a player who is good enough, who's worth transferring in now and back out again later if you do need to. If you don't have him already, hopefully most of you do by now. But it is a struggle in the buy section. I'm trying to come up with another forward who I would just really like to have, a player with good fixtures, a player who plays in Game Week 29. And the best I could come up with was Kai Havertz, to be perfectly honest with you guys. Leicester and West Ham are the next two fixtures, really nice. Forest and Man United in 27 and 28. Man United, by the way, are conceding a lot of chances at the moment. And in Game Week 29, they face an out-of-form Chelsea team. So I think Havertz could be okay, should be nailed on right now with the injury issues Arsenal have. He is getting opportunities to score. He is finding himself in slightly better form than he was earlier on in the season. I think it could be an interesting time to buy Havertz. 7.8 million, maybe a little expensive, but could be worth it. I kind of like this as maybe a bit of a differential. Watkins is going to be a monitor once more. We can go back to the injury conversation we already had about him. Chris Wood is super interesting. I mean, I don't think I need to say this, but if you have Wood in your squad, there is no way you sell him. But would you buy him? Maybe. It's like maybe, isn't it? Because Fulham away, Newcastle away, Arsenal at home. This next run of 3 fixtures is not good. It really isn't good at all. So you do wonder where the chances are going to come from. Now, his numbers look really good. They look really good on this chart here, 3.75 XG. But unfortunately, so much of that came in the Brighton game that it's really difficult to say whether he will be consistently getting the numbers. But what we will say is that he does consistently get the returns, even if the underlying numbers aren't always there. I mean, look at this, man. If you look at the expected points column here, 32 expected points, 60 actual points. Crazy discrepancy here. And you do wonder in the more difficult fixtures, can he maintain it? Genuinely, I think he could. But I'm not convinced enough to put him in the buy category. That's all I'm going to say on Wood. Gagbo is the next player here. Double game week. If you have a spare Liverpool position in your team, you need a new striker, I think Gakpo is definitely someone you could consider. And Mateta is interesting because the next 3 fixtures are kind of a little bit average, even though Mateta has been performing well recently. And game week 29 is a blank. It's not like your Liverpool guys or your Aston Villa guys where you have a double now and a blank later. It is literally just a blank later. So I'm not as convinced by Mateta as maybe some of the other players on this list, but he's not an avoid. He's like a monitor. But again, another player, if you have him, you don't sell him. But if you don't have him, do you buy him? Not sure. Raul Jimenez, a straight avoid against Forest. I don't think we want to have him against that fixture necessarily. Cunha against Liverpool, also not the week to buy him. And Omar Marmoush looks really good. The numbers aren't really there for him, unfortunately. Not too much in ways of tangible attacking threat. And the fixtures are not good enough to justify buying him anyway. So even though I know a lot of us will be desperate to buy new forwards this week, I don't think Marmoush is the solution. Wissa is probably the guy I would go for. Maybe Havertz, maybe Watkins, Wood. Yeah, it's tough out there for forwards. So I think we'll move on to midfielders. Okay, this is where things get a lot easier. There is loads of great midfield options for us to think about buying this week. And Cliver is going to be top of the list for me. 5.9 million man. And look at these fixtures. Beautiful stuff. Southampton, Wolves, Brighton, Spurs. And then it's actually Brentford in game week 29 as well. So an amazing run of fixtures for an informed Bournemouth team. We certainly need to be having a look at their players, particularly given how cheap they are. Cliver has been in red hot form. Penalty taker as well, playing in behind the striker. And remember, these numbers are from just 4 starts in the Premier League in the last 6 game weeks. So that really does show just how well he is doing recently. Southampton is just the best fixture of the season at the moment, and targeting them with your FPL transfers is always a good idea. So Justin Cliver against Southampton, I think we could be in for a cooking in this game week and beyond as well, with many great fixtures to come. Brian Mbeumo, as mentioned in the keep section, is a great pick right now, so I would also consider buying him if you can afford a slightly more expensive midfielder. And Morgan Rogers with the double game week. Again, if you are planning a free hit in game week 29, I would really strongly be thinking about buying Rogers right now, maybe even ahead of the Bournemouth players. But if you are not free hitting in 29, it becomes a little bit more difficult whether to buy Rogers or not. So that's going to have to come down to you guys and what your chip strategy is. Again, check out last video if you want to maybe a little bit of help and advice on what your chip strategy might look like. Dango is down in the monitor section, and it really is just a consequence of there being so many great options, because I think Dango is also a great option. Great fixtures, as we mentioned, and he is playing as the central striker in this Bournemouth system at the moment. Now, Cliver is putting up better numbers, but that is a lot to do with the penalties that Cliver has at his disposal. And an out-of-position striker for an informed team of great fixtures at the price of 5.1 million, it is really nice. Long-term, I don't know if Dango will continue to play as the forward, but for now, I think he's a really strong option. And if you can't quite afford the likes of a Cliver or maybe a Rogers, then Dango is a cheap guy. Has to be on the wish list. Trossard is a bit of a differential here as well for Arsenal. We know Saka is out long term. Martinelli is also going to be out for a few weeks as well, which means Trossard should be nailed on for minutes ahead of these great fixtures for Arsenal. So again, if you want to go something different, Trossard is certainly a place I would look. Semenyo is as low as he is only because Cliver and Dango I think are better options than him, but I don't think Semenyo is a bad option at all either. So it's up to you, really. I prefer Cliver and Dango. Some of you guys are going to prefer Semenyo, but I would put Cliver and Dango, given the form, given the stats, watching them play on the pitch, the positions that they're occupying. I think Semenyo is just a tier below them, perhaps, but still a strong option. And Marcus Rashford, the final player on the monitor list, and maybe you throw Marlon in the same category as the potential striker. If Watkins is confirmed out, we need to have a look at Rashford for the double game week and the good fixtures. Again, if you're free hitting in 29, I'd be more willing to take a risk on Rashford or Marlon, but there is going to be some rotation risk here for these guys, given that we think it's probably the striker position that they're competing for right now. Maybe a wing position possibly as well. But in general, I think it's a really interesting differential. We know how good Rashford can be. And, I can't wait to see him starting a game in an Aston Villa shirt, having made his debut against Spurs yesterday. But it's exciting. It's risky. Do you dare? That's the question. Same with Marlon, by the way, who I think is probably slightly ahead of schedule compared to Rashford in terms of his integration into this Aston Villa setup. And we're going to have to avoid some players here. Ahmad is going to go in this category, not because he's a bad pick, but because the other cheap midfielders just look so more tempting than him right now. It's not that Ahmad is bad, it's that everyone else is looking so good. The competition is rife in midfield right now, and I'd certainly think about moving to a 5-man midfield formation for the upcoming game weeks. And then we have Elanga and Gibbs-White, again, a consequence of their fixtures and the great options at our disposal mean that they slot into the avoid section just because of opportunity cost. If you go for an Elanga, if you go for a Gibbs-White, it means you're going to be missing out on Cliver and Burmo, Rogers, Dango, all of these kind of guys. So that's why they're in the avoid section. Not because they're bad, but because there's so much better opportunity out there right now. Okay, defenders, Kirkes, top of the list, no doubt about it. A great run of fixtures for Bournemouth means that I think he is the most obvious defender to buy right now if you are looking for a new guy. Bournemouth are a strong defence. A decent defence there. They are keeping a couple of clean sheets. The fixtures are amazing. He has got a little bit of an attacking threat as well, with 1 goal and 1 assist in the last 6 game weeks. Maybe an overperformance there, but still, we know what he's all about. Gabriel is another player to consider here with his great fixtures. If you don't have Gabriel, after that Man City game, it might be time to put him back into your squad for a long-term defensive pick. And Howson is in here as a differential, and I would only go for him if I was looking to save some money on Kirkes. Generally, I do prefer Kirkes, but it has to be said, Howson does have some attacking threat from those set pieces as well. So it's not like he has no attacking threat. I do prefer Kirkes, but Howson is not that far behind if you do want to save 0.5 million on your new defender. Robinson wants a monitor. You could definitely consider buying him this week if you can afford to do so. Van Dijk is also in here as a monitor, mostly because I'm not really sure who would buy him. I don't think Virgil is a bad pickup, but I'm kind of questioning, you know, what kind of position must you be in where you're looking at buying him? So a bit of a weird one. Don't really know how to place him, but he is one of the more popular buys this week in the world of FPL ahead of the double game week. Munoz, we are coming close to putting him in the avoid category because of that game week 29 blank for Crystal Palace, but Everton at home is a good fixture. The next few fixtures are decent for Crystal Palace. For a defender, we don't mind Everton, so it's okay. Aina is maybe a monitor, getting close to an avoid, but I know what you guys say every time I put Aina in the avoid section, but we know by now that, you know, Forest can do it against anyone, but I wouldn't be super convinced by their defensive assets right now. Digne, not worth the risk. Aston Villa don't keep clean sheets at the best of times, and even though they do have a double game week, one of the fixtures is against Liverpool, which, you know, that's not going to be a clean sheet there. We also know that Digne is a rotation risk player, particularly when there are multiple games within individual game weeks. So I could definitely see Maatsen playing against Ipswich and Digne playing against Liverpool, which would definitely be a bad situation if you were to buy Digne. I think in general, the Aston Villa defense are just avoids, just because of the tough fixture against Liverpool. Chelsea's not great either. Aston Villa don't keep clean sheets. You know, where are we going to get the points from? I'm not really sure. Gavardio, not a player I would buy ahead of these tough fixtures. And Mark Gahey, he doesn't have the attacking threat that Munoz has. Munoz has incredible attacking threat. Gahey at a similar price does not. So if you're looking to buy a player, we know they're going to blank in 29. I don't think we go for Gahey. Straight up avoid for me, even in some okay fixtures. I think it will damage you in the long term, maybe. And finally, goalkeepers. Raya is going to be a keep for me, with the fixtures looking much better. Flecken, I think, judging by manager comments, he is going to be available for game week 25. And I think the fixtures are good enough that he's probably not worth a goalkeeper transfer. Sanchez, however, now has some rotation risk. So he'd be a goalkeeper I'd certainly be looking at removing. Chelsea pretty bad defensively anyway, even in good fixtures. So those combination of factors means I would look to sell Sanchez. Ederson, potential injury, expensive and tough fixtures is another reason I would sell him. But as always, I need a lot of convincing to sell a goalkeeper, and I think Sanchez and Ederson do match that criteria. In terms of buying a new goalkeeper, Kepa Arrizabalaga, if you're looking for a cheap guy, would be my number one choice. Great fixtures. We know how good Bournemouth are looking at the moment. I think he is definitely a consideration if you want an access to the Bournemouth defence, but maybe you're looking at the goalkeeper route. Kepa is the guy for you. Raya is also a consideration to buy for a goalkeeper at this moment if you have a little bit more cash to splash, but I would be avoiding sells ahead of this tough fixture run. And Henderson, even though the fixtures look okay, again, it's that blank game week 29 that puts me off. But again, we do need to consider if you are free hitting in game week 29, then Henderson is maybe more of a consideration for you. But generally, why not go for Kepa? Why not go for Arrizabalaga? Looks like a really good pickup at this moment. So there you go. Those are the goalkeepers. And if there were any players I missed during this video, and I'm sure there might be one or two, let me know in the comment section and I will rate them a buy, sell, keep, or an avoid. It's good to be back, guys. So if you enjoyed this one, do drop a like, do subscribe if you are new around here, and I will see you tomorrow for the 100 experts video. Yes, we're one day ahead of schedule on uploads this week. Hope you guys enjoy it, and I'll see you later, mates. Bye-bye.